Welcome back to Let's Read Umineko. Things are happening, and we are going to see what those things are right now. Shannon entered the entrance hall to the mansion with a tottering gate. Never known how to say that word, but I'm going to go with gate. Shannon entered the entrance hall to the mansion with a tottering gait. A mixture of exaltation and uncertainty gave her a feeling that she couldn't easily describe. It swelled up in her chest until it felt like she was about to burst. After stopping for a second in front of the servant room to take a deep breath and calm her heart, she opened the door. I just want to point out, there's no way that these two are having a happy ending. With that whole prophecy or the witch's legend or whatever, there's zero chance of that happening. I mean, we'll see, but the prospects are not looking good. Inside, Goda, who had been ordered to take the midnight shift at the mansion tonight, was absorbed in a worn-out crossword puzzle magazine. He looked up for an instant to see if one of the family had come, but when he realized it was a fellow servant, he returned to his puzzle as if nothing had happened.
源氏様より合田さんのお手伝いにつくように言われてまいりました。
ああ、そうですか。それは助かります。そろそろ戸締まりの見回りに行きたかったのですが、ここを開けてもいいものか困っていたのです。何しろ、旦那様方の会合はまだだいぶ続きそうですからね。いつ何時お茶のご用命があるかもわかりませんし。
そうですよね。ではどうしましょうか。私が留守番を。
ではシャノンさん、申し訳ありませんが、お屋敷内の見回りをお願いします。私はここで親族の皆さんのご用命の待機をしておりますので。
I don't think this is gonna end well because she's clearly supposed to be on duty in the guest house, but she's shirking her duties right now, and if anybody sees her, especially Kraus, after making that specific alteration to the schedule, it's gonna look really suspicious.
はい。
Shannon was slightly disgusted. Even though she'd come here to help out as a favor, she was casually being forced to do the job of the person actually on duty. Furthermore, after one-sidedly forcing that task on her, Goda returned to his magazine once again and became immersed in his crossword puzzle. Shannon bowed her head as a token sign of respect for her elder, then left the room to patrol the mansion. Thanks to her being a bit ticked off, she managed to suppress that floaty feeling she'd been having until just now. Anyway, she couldn't let Genji or Kanon see her looking like this. She wanted a little time to herself until her heart calmed down, so maybe going on patrol wouldn't be so bad. She began to hear the tumultuous voices of the family discussion coming from the dining hall. Someone was speaking at great length, only to be interrupted by someone else. This second person also began to speak in a very long, drawn-out fashion, until yet another person interrupted. That kept on repeating. It was as though their displeasure was seeping out through their voices. She had been told to go to the guest house, so it would be bad if Kraus discovered her. Thinking this, Shannon dashed past the dining hall. Then she went along a prearranged route through the dark mansion, checking that all the locks were secure. She walked down the hall, checking each window. There were no humans on Rokenjima, other than those connected to the family, so locking up didn't really serve much of a purpose. No one had been in the habit of locking up at the Yoshida-miya head family, at least not until Natsuhi had scolded them for being careless. The metal fixtures on the windows were ice cold. As she checked them one by one, the glow in her heart seemed to cool down. At that time, she thought she saw something twinkling across the hall. Twinkling? How could anything be twinkling through the darkness of the hall? She figured she must have been imagining it, but she still held her breath. Grasping a curtain, she fearfully gazed down the hall. However, other than the occasional crack of thunder brightening the hallway, she was unable to glimpse any flicker again. Must have been her imagination after all. Maybe her heart was so agitated that she'd seen something that didn't even exist. Shannon went back to checking the windows. However, a certain unnerving memory was resurrected in the back of her mind. It was that ghost story which had been passed down amongst the servants who served the Yoshida-miya head family. The mansion had two different masters, one of the day and one of the night. Beatrice, the master of the night, would sometimes fly around the mansion in the form of sparkling butterflies. That was the story. Come to think of it, didn't Kanon-kun once say he'd seen it with his own eyes? Though he got sulky when I said it, he must have imagined it and refused to believe him. Could it possibly be true? The roar of the thunder gave no answer. I was really thinking something was going to happen there. And, I mean, we don't know that something hasn't happened, but it's a very peculiar scene. So, we're on the second day. I don't even remember the scene that said the first day. but there must have been one. Genji tightened his bow tie and looked outside through a crack in the curtains. Maybe the rain had died down a tiny bit since the previous night, but the thick rain clouds didn't seem like they'd be letting any trace of the morning sun get by. The morning was dim and far from refreshing.
やはり今日いっぱいはやみそうにないか。
お待たせしました、源氏様。
Kenon finished checking his appearance and exited the washroom. On their normal schedule, it was rare for anyone to have to suffer going straight from a midnight shift to an early morning shift. They were on a special schedule for the 2 days of the family conference. However, unless the typhoon passed today, the relatives' stay on this island would last until tomorrow. Kenon thought it best to be prepared for the special schedule to last an extra day. The two of them left the guest house, opening their umbrellas. The rose garden had been devastated by the wind and rain on the previous night. Even though they'd spent several days making it beautiful to welcome the guests, one stormy night was enough to ruin it. Kenon sighed. The two headed for the mansion. They were supposed to meet up with Goda and prepare breakfast. Goda was such a perfectionist that he had probably already woken up and was probably already preparing a breakfast as exquisite and elegant as glasswork. They reached the overhang by the entrance to the mansion and folded up their umbrellas. Genji took a bundle of several keys from his pocket and unlocked the front door. The Yoshida-miya family mansion was the only thing on Rokkenjima, so in the past they hadn't been in the habit of locking up. However, Natsuhi had ordered that the mansion be locked up from midnight to early morning. Ever since then, unlocking the door in the early morning had become part of the servants' morning shift. This task had been given to Genji and Kenon so that Goda could start preparing breakfast as soon as he woke up. Silence had fallen in the mansion, giving the impression that the mansion itself was still asleep.
では、朝の仕事を始めよう。
はい。
The two of them split up and began opening the curtains throughout the mansion. If the curtains stayed closed, the mansion would remain enveloped in faint darkness as though it was still trapped in the previous night. Following a well-rehearsed procedure, Kenon went around the mansion, opening the curtains for one window after another without having to retrace his steps once. Even with this horrible weather, drawing the curtains made it feel just a little bit like morning. While doing that, he passed in front of the kitchen. Even though he hadn't smelled anything yet, his stomach started aching for some of Goda's prized cooking.
おはようございます。
He tried to greet Goda, who should have been getting breakfast ready, but Goda was nowhere to be seen. The kitchen was darkly lit, and not only were the curtains not open, but the fan wasn't even running. It was still cold, without any trace of a fire being lit, so of course there were no signs of breakfast being made either. Though it would have been inexcusable, perhaps Goda had overslept. Even servants are only human. They sometimes sleep in and show up late. In the rare case that such a thing happens, it's part of a servant's code to hide the unsightly scene before anyone notices, smoothly cover it up, and make sure the family never even realizes that anything has gone wrong. Kenon took the receiver of the phone that had been fitted to the wall and dialed the number for the extension line in the servants' sleeping room. He couldn't hear that characteristic sound of a dial tone. Kenon tried picking up the receiver again, but even so, he couldn't hear the usual dial tone. He tried dialing again, but it had no apparent effect. Could the lightning last night have damaged some machine, breaking the extension line? The equipment in this mansion was all worn out. Kenon fully understood that even the smallest thing could have caused it to break down. He gave up trying to wake Goda with the phone and dashed over to the servants' sleeping room. How long has it been since I stopped sleeping and started lazily staring up at the ceiling? That vague sense of awakening was part of Natsuhi's usual morning experience. She always slept lightly, and she couldn't sleep at all without medicine. To Natsuhi, sleep was definitely not a happy thing. When she looked outside, she saw that it was still pouring. If she hadn't sensed a tiny amount of light, she might have mistakenly thought that it was still the previous night. She herself was one of the hosts, so she mustn't wake up later than her guests. Urging herself on, she raised up her body, which still hadn't completely recovered from yesterday's weariness. No one would torment her as long as she remained inside this room. Her headache wouldn't get any worse here. This room was the only place she could find peace. So when she left, it meant returning to the world where her husband's siblings kept trying to stab each other in the back. In that case, wouldn't it be better to just stay locked up in this room forever? That ridiculous notion brought a bitter smile to Natsuhi's face. She was starting to sound like Kinzo. Though she often complained that Kinzo staying locked up in his own room and refusing to attend to everyone else. The truth was that she longed to do the same. Natsuhi gave her head a small shake, and her fantasy was replaced by the reawakening of her usual headache. When she reached for the doorknob, trying to leave the room, her hand touched the scorpion charm that she had hung from it before going to sleep the previous night. It was Maria's charm, which Natsuhi had received from Jessica. Didn't Jessica say something about it having the power to repel magic, telling it to hang it from her doorknob? Maybe it was thanks to the charm that at least this room had been protected from the malice of her husband's siblings. As she thought this, her mood began to get a little more cheerful.
ジェシカのおかげで少しはゆっくり眠れたということかしら。
Then Natsuhi remembered. That's right, last night I promised Jessica that I'd give her a charm of my own in exchange for this one, didn't I? Natsuhi opened a drawer on her dresser and took out an antique accessory case that she had treasured when she was a child. Inside, there were many small objects that Natsuhi had thought were valuable at the time. From amidst those, she pulled out a red pouch. Inside was a small, round mirror, about 10 centimeters across. It looked quite old, but the design on the back of the mirror was very ornate, and it felt like something with historical value. At the very least, it seemed much more authentic than the other charm, which looked like a plastic scorpion keychain. She had heard that this was a spiritual mirror for warding off evil spirits, and she had been given it specially by her grandmother when her grandfather's mementos had been distributed. It had been believed since long ago that a strange power resided in this mirror. Perhaps people thought it could reflect calamity and malice in the same way it reflected light. Natsuhi returned the mirror to its pouch. It would probably be a fitting object to hand over to Jessica. Just as she was placing it in her pocket, the sound of someone knocking on the door suddenly echoed throughout the room.
はい。
おはようございます、奥様。源氏でございます。早朝から申し訳ございません。
今行きます。何事ですか?
No servant had ever come to her this early in the morning, nor had they come to wake her in person. Perhaps something bad had happened. Maybe some fatal oversight had been made while preparing breakfast, something that would shame the household in front of their guests. Natsuhi took a deep breath in anticipation for whatever troubles she was about to hear of. When she opened the door, Genji once again gave a morning greeting while bowing deeply. Natsuhi tentatively responded.
おはようございます。何かありましたか?
申し訳ございません。昨夜の落雷で電話機器に故障が出たようです。内線電話が不通になっておりますもので、直接のお伺いになってしまったことをお許しください。
内線電話が普通? それは面倒になりましたね。
修理は可能ですか？
残念ながら故障箇所が分かりません。後で業者を呼んで修理させたいと思います。
ということは、この台風が過ぎるまでは修理不能ということですか？つまり、客人たちの滞在中はずっと普通ということですね。客人たちのお世話に支障は？
出ないよう最善を尽くします。
結構です。粗相のないようよろしく頼みます。
Natsuhi let out a small sigh of relief. She had been prepared for the worst, but damage to the telephones wasn't the kind of trouble she was worried about. Then again, even this would probably be enough to spark sarcasm from Ava. Natsuhi gave her head a light shake.
朝食の準備は順調ですか？
それがゴーダの姿が見えません。朝食の支度もまだ行われておらず。
何ですって？
Natsuhi was indignant. To her, this was a much bigger problem than the phones not working. And despite that, this piece of information was the part that had been postponed. Why did everything go well most of the time and then come to something like this when the relatives were visiting? Natsuhi put her head to her forehead and shook her head. Put her hand to her forehead and shook her head.
大方朝寝坊でもしているのでしょう。とにかく、誰でもいいから急いで朝食の準備を。
Natsuhi exited into the hall and turned around for a second to close the door to her room. The creepy thing she saw there silenced her completely. It was an unpleasant sight, as though someone had dipped their fingers in a reddish-black liquid and scratched at the door around the doorknob. It was probably some sort of awful prank, arranged by some person who wanted to make it look as though they tried to force the door with bloody hands.
これは悪趣味な。
私も今ここにお伺いして初めて気づきました。後ほど清掃いたします。
趣味の悪い客人の冗談でしょう。不愉快です。実に不愉快です。
Who in the world would pull such a childish and disgusting prank? Natsuhi had a pretty good idea, but of course there was no proof. Even if she pushed the issue, it would just seem as though she was making a fuss about nothing. In fact, it would surely be better to act as though she hadn't even realized that such a prank had been played on her. Natsuhi gave the order to have it cleaned and headed off to the parlor with a squeak of her heels. Now I'm wondering, obviously there's the possibility that it was a prank, but there's also the possibility that that it was actually like Beatrice trying to get in there last night and the charm like repelled her on the doorknob and that maybe it caused her to bleed when she touched the doorknob or something. I don't know. That's possible. Or maybe it's like it stopped one of the other guests from, I don't know, there's a lot of potential angles this could be. But we'll probably find out soon enough, so no point speculating about that just yet. When Natsuhi and Genji arrived in the parlor, Ava and Hideyoshi were already there.
おはようございます、皆さん。
おはよう、夏日さん。朝食も合田さんが作るっちゅう話やないか。朝から胃袋が大喜びで騒ぎっぱなしなんや。
本家の楽しみは食事くらいがせいぜいですものね。
エヴァさんも朝からご機嫌がよろしいようで何よりです。
With a wary expression, Natsuhi returned Ava's gaze, which was fiercely competitive despite the early hour. Then Kanon jogged in. After bowing an apology to the relatives for running inside the mansion, he noticed Genji and told him something in a small voice.
カノン、ゴーダはまだ見つからないのですか？
申し訳ございません、奥様。お屋敷内もゲストハウスも回った。まだ。
一体どこへ行ったというのです？とりあえず今はゴーダより朝食の準備が先決です。至急対応しなさい。
はい。
Kanon glanced at Genji. It seemed he had something else to report, but was uncertain whether or not the words should come from him. Genji nodded and decided to give the report himself.
奥様、ゴーダだけではありません。旦那様の姿もありません。
主人が？
はい。奥様より先に旦那様に朝食の準備がないことをご報告しようと思い、それから旦那様だけではありません。ルドルフ様ご夫妻とローザ様のお姿もありません。
ゲストハウスにも？屋敷にもですか？
はい。ゲストハウスの部屋にもおられません。
When she'd heard that Goda alone was missing, she'd assumed that he had slept in or was loafing around somewhere. However, now that she'd learned that several of the relatives were also nowhere to be seen, she began to take a slightly more optimistic view. Could last night's family conference have continued all night, up until the present moment? If so, they might have wanted to cool their heads after being shut in a stuffy room, going out for walks on their own through the rain. The part about cooling their heads really sounded like something Kraus would say. Goda had probably been summoned to accompany them and aid them in some way. Goda was not a man who lost track of time. He had to understand that preparations for breakfast would be hindered if he did not return. However, maybe the family conference had continued until this very moment, with an atmosphere that would make it hard for anyone to slip out. Yes, that theory would be quite convincing for Natsuhi. She remembered the illusion she'd felt that morning, as though the previous night had never ended. When she learned that the feeling wasn't just an illusion, she once again took a deep, wary breath. After all, that banquet of filthy vultures circling Kinzo's property was still going on.
大方、庭園のどこか、あるいは海岸の方で相も変わらず遺産の話を繰り返しているのでしょう。とにかくゴーダを呼び戻さなくてはいつまでも朝食の準備が整いません。
ってことは何や、兄さんたちの話し合いはまだ続いとるんか。
She had planned to say it in a small voice, but Hideyoshi overheard Natsui and managed to grasp the situation.
兄さんもルドルフもタフね。ローザの場合は若さかしら。私たち夕べの24時過ぎにはもう眠くてベッドに戻らせてもらったんだけど、確かにあの時点でもまだ兄さんたちは熱論を交わしてたわ。男って熱くなると嫌ね。
Natsuhi snorted, her face still blank.
カノン、表を探してらっしゃい。ゴーダを見つけたらすぐに戻って朝食の準備をするよう伝えなさい。
かしこまりました。
夏日姉さん、表とは限らないわよ。お父様の書斎ってことはないかしら。
なるほど、考えられん話やないで。どういう話の流れかはわからんが、お父さんの書斎に場所を移してお父さんにも混じってもらって議論を続けてるっちゅう可能性は十分あるやろ。
そのような汚らわしい話題を好んでお父様が書斎へ招き入れることなど考えられません。
あらそう。じゃあ仕方ないわね。源氏さんとカノン君は申し訳ないけど外を探してきてちょうだい。確かに兄さんなら頭を冷やすために外を散歩しようなんて言い出しても不思議はないわ。たとえこんな天気でもね。
Well, now that they've said that, now they're going to be in the study. Or someone is, anyway. I don't know. This is not looking good. I feel like we might have... Like, the first murder might have happened. We'll see. I should also mention, you know how I mentioned that I was spoiled on how one of the murders was carried out, but I have no idea who dies. I have no idea who lives and who dies throughout all of this, so this is a complete mystery to me.
私はお父様の書斎に行ってくるわ。ひょっとするとそこにいるかもしれないしね。
客人であるエヴァさんにそこまでのご足労はおかけできません。私が行ってきます。朝のご挨拶も兼ねて。
あら、じゃあお願いするわね。でも朝の挨拶を交わしてくれるかは疑わしいわね。夏日姉さんってお父様とは仲よろしかったかしら？
仲が良いかは分かりかねますが、後宮家の跡継ぎの妻を許されるだけの信頼を得ていると確信しています。
ならきっと返事くらいはしてくれるわね。お父様とは朝食くらいご一緒したいの。ぜひ降りてきてくださるよう説得してくれないかしら。私たちはすっかり嫌われちゃってるみたいだけど、そこまで信頼を得ている夏日姉さんの言うことなら聞いてくれそうですもの。そこまで短歌を切ってお父様を説得できず一人で降りてきちゃったりしたら、信頼を得ているなんて二度と言えないかもね。
自信はありませんが、努力はします。
Natsuhi responded, looking discouraged. However, knowing Kinzo's temperament, she had absolutely no confidence in her ability to bring him out. Eva was clearly mocking her, confident that Natsuhi wouldn't be able to get Kinzo to come down. But even so, Natsuhi would lose face if she gave up, saying it was impossible and letting Eva go instead. Eva's mean-spirited and unreasonable demand made Natsuhi clench her fists slightly. When Genji realized this, he softly spoke to her over her shoulder.
奥様、よろしければこれをお持ちください。
それは？
Genji handed Natsuhi a sparkling gold key of ornate design. It was the key to Kinzo's study. The study had an auto-lock and couldn't be unlocked as long as Kinzo forbade entrance. However, since Genji was especially trusted by Kinzo, he was allowed to carry a key to that door.
でもこの鍵を使ったら、あなたも咎めを受けるのではありませんか？
親方様は深くお休みになられている時、扉をそれに親方様にお部屋を出ていただくよう説得するには、ぜひお使いください。
源氏。
Until now, Natsuhi had thought of Genji as a cold servant who wouldn't do anything for her since he worked directly under Kinzo. But it looked like she would have to alter her understanding of him. She wanted to communicate her gratitude, but by then Genji had already turned his back on her and was walking down the corridor with Kanon. But as Natsuhi watched them go, the words directed at her from behind were sneering.
じゃあお父様を必ず連れてきてね。息子のかわいい嫁の言うことですもの。きっと聞いてくれるわよ。私たちは客人だから、ここでのんびりくつろがせてもらうわ。
予算かえば口が過ぎるで。すまんが夏日姉さん、お父さんのことをよろしく頼むわ。
Without answering, Natsuhi forcefully spun around on her heels and quickly left that place. After all that excitement the previous night, there was no way anyone was going to wake up early. George, Aniki, Jessica, and I were snoring loudly on the beds in the cousins' room. But Maria, who had gone straight to bed without joining in, was completely awake. As she rubbed her sleepy eyes and looked around, she was met with the loud snoring of the other three cousins. For a while, Maria had to think about what had happened. After that, she realized that her mother wasn't with her, and she quickly got lonely. Maria left the cousin's room, trying to head to the room that had been arranged for her and her mother. Paying no heed to the three who were sleeping soundly, she slammed the door shut. In response, Battler mumbled and rolled over in his sleep, but it wasn't enough to wake him up. After a while, Maria returned, once again opening the door with a lively bang. When she had left the room, her face had been sleepy, but now that she was back, she looked irritated. After that, she climbed up on Battler's bed, which happened to be the closest, and started yelling and jumping on it like it was a trampoline. After making sure I was awake, Maria moved over to George Aniki's bed and started jumping on that too. In that manner, the three of us were all greeted with an extremely pleasant awakening.
ありがとう、マリアちゃん。僕たちは夕べが遅かったから寝坊しちゃったのを起こしてくれたんだね。でも、もう少しだけ起こし方を優しくしてくれると完璧だったかな。
ジョージ兄さんは本当に大人だよ。尊敬するぜ。
もうすぐ7時なんだな。ま、確かにもう起きてもいい頃だぜ。
ローザおばさんが部屋にいなかったの？もう起きてお屋敷の方に行っちゃったのかな。
Maria kept groaning and looking unhappy. She didn't exactly seem lonely because her mother wasn't around. It was more like she was irritated and thrown off balance because her mother wasn't where she'd expected. If we could just tell her where her mother was, that alone would probably calm her down. But unfortunately, we had no way of knowing where Aunt Rosa was, except that she wasn't here.
どうせ朝食に行くことになるんだし、屋敷の方に行こうぜ。
そうだな。マリア、一緒に屋敷へ行こうぜ。きっとローザおばさんもそこさ。
ママはお屋敷なら行く。
そうだね。お屋敷に行こうか。多分親たちはもう向こうに行ってるんだよ。
Maria regained her usual composure so completely. Her earlier tantrum now seemed like a lie. We got dressed, left the room, and headed for the mansion. Once more there was a knocking sound on the study door, but there was no answer. He seemed to be sleeping still, and I could not wake him. If she went back downstairs and said something like that, Ava would probably be amused and triumphant. And even putting Ava aside, it was problematic that Kinzo had stayed shut away during this entire once-a-year conference, not even coming down to greet anyone. Even the family head, no, especially the family head, couldn't fail to make an appearance. I wonder if I can convince him myself. Natsuhi readied herself and used the key that she'd borrowed from Genji to open the door. Even though she was prepared for the sweet stench which seemed to eat into one's brain as it poured out the small crack in the door, She couldn't help but grimace. Thinking that he might still be sleeping, Natsuhi entered the room quietly. When she did, Kinzo was already awake and looking down out the window.
お目覚めでしたか。おはようございます。
どうやって入ったのか。
Kinzo spoke with his back still facing her. His voice was not harsh, but calm, and Natsuhi was slightly reassured. However, though he was awake, he wouldn't have ignored all that knocking if he was in a good mood. Natsuhi wasn't able to relax.
申し訳ございませんでした。源氏さんにお願いして、書斎の鍵をお借りさせていただきました。
ほう、源氏がか。我が友がそれに足ると思ったならば、話を聞かぬわけにもいくまい。して、私に何言おうか。
はい。もうじき朝食の準備が整いますが、ぜひお父様にもおいでいただきたく思いまして。
朝食はここでとる。いつものように運ばせるがいい。
しかしお父様、年に一度の親族会議です。せめてお顔をお見せになってください。
下に降りて、私の死後、遺産をどのように食いちぎるのかを決める議論に加われというのか。バカらしい。そのような話は私を抜きで好きに進めるがいい。そしてそれが親族会議だというなら、私がこの部屋を出るほどの価値はない。私は忙しいのだ。構うでない。
His last words carried the threat that any further questions would not be appreciated. Natsuhi realized that adding any further pleas would finally bring his wrath down upon her. She didn't look forward to facing Ava's sarcasm, but there was nothing more Natsuhi could do.
そうですか。わかりました。みんな残念がるでしょうが、そう伝えます。
Natsuhi decided to give up. Bowing silently, she tried to leave the room before Kinzo's spasmodic temper could flare up. As she did, Kinzo spoke to her. His voice was so calm and gentle it felt like it came from an entirely different person.
夏日、後ろ宮の家に嫁ぎ、もう随分になるな。
はい。後宮を名乗ることを許されてから、もう随分になります。
前の家が恋しくなることもあるか。
いいえ、嫁ぐとは成果を捨てることです。私は後宮夏日。帰る家も懐かしむ家も、すべてはこの後宮の家のみです。
She truly wasn't exaggerating. Such was the resolve she felt whenever she applied the Ushiromiya family name to herself. That's precisely why she was so saddened when her husband didn't treat her like an Ushiromiya, leaving her to race about in vain.
クラウスな女でお前がその夫であったならいや、それは言うまい。
それ、お父様。
Natsuhi was shocked. If Kinzo's words just now were what they seemed, it would have been more than enough to make up for all she'd suffered up to that point.
忘れよ。年寄りのざれ言だ。
Kinzo once again faced away from her. He'd told her to forget it, but Natsuhi couldn't help feeling a warmth in her heart.
お父様、この夏日は血はつながらずともお父様の娘です。後宮家の名誉もそして お父さん、この夏日が必ずや守ってみせますから。
お前に片翼のわしをまとう資格はない。しかしお前の心には確かに片翼のわしが刻まれている。ならばお前は間違いなく我が血族で後宮家の栄光を引き継ぐものだ。お前の衣服にわしがないことを嘲笑う者もいよう。しかしそれに耳を貸すことはない。心にわしを持つ者だけが真の私の血族なのだ。お前を後宮家に迎えられたことを今は光栄に思っている。
Without saying anything more, Kinzo remained with his back to Natsuhi. However, Natsuhi couldn't help but feel something warm well up inside her that she hadn't felt since long ago, when she had been just a child. Natsuhi bowed silently to his back and left the room.
あら、ちょうどいいタイミングだったわね。お父様の様子はどう？あんまり遅いから様子を見に来ちゃったのよ。
When Natsuhi left the study, she saw Ava climbing the stairs and their eyes met. Ava was smirking unpleasantly, thinking that Natsuhi would leave grudgingly after failing to convince Kinzo. However, the way Natsuhi was now, such a frivolous laugh would not disturb her. She was not permitted to wear the family crest on her clothing, but she was permitted to wear it in her heart. So she spoke calmly, clearly, and confidently with the dignity of the one who would protect the Yoshida-miya family's glory.
お父様は親族会議にはおいでにならないそうです。汚らわしい議題に関心はないと仰せです。
とかなんとか言っちゃって。お父様を説得できなかったんなら素直にそう言えばいいじゃない。
哀れですね。お父様が嘆かれるお気持ちも分かろうというものです。
それはどういう意味よ。
Natsuhi did not answer. Just as Kinzo had done earlier, she showed Ava her back as she headed down the stairs. Ava finally realized that she was being made fun of, that something had happened to quickly bolster Natsuhi's confidence. Even so, she apparently didn't have the courage to risk Kinzo's wrath. Unable to even knock on the door, she could only click her tongue, make a motion as though scratching at it, and follow after Natsuhi.
それで兄さんたちはいたの？お父様に聞いたの？
聞きそびれましたが、書斎の中にはいませんでした。お父様が夫たちの下船な話のために入室を許すこともありえませんから、行き先を知ることもないでしょう。下に降りて使用人たちが探してくれるのを待ちましょう。朝食は遅れますが、お茶でもいかがです？エヴァさん。
別に結構よ。
Ava couldn't hide her confusion at the complete difference in Natsuhi's attitude. She was acting so boldly, and while Ava hated to admit it, she even had a sense of dignity about her. Unable to find fault with anything, Ava could only follow Natsuhi back to the parlor. When the two of them returned to the parlor, Hideyoshi had been joined by the 4 children and Nanjo. Genji, who had been talking with Hideyoshi, reported the current situation when he noticed that Natsuhi had returned.
主人たちはまだ見つからないのですか？
はい、申し訳ございません。あと、熊沢が朝食の準備に入りました。もう少し時間をいただきたいとのことです。
The clock read a little past 8. 8 should have been the time to start breakfast. Normally, going over that time limit would be a disgrace to the host.
今、カノンが表を探しています。 それからシャノンの姿も見えません。
シャノンまで？まったく、主人は何を従えて散歩に出かけたのですか。
Just how many people had gone missing by now? And now that the number was this large, it was starting to feel truly unpleasant, as though the people here were the only ones being left out of something interesting. At least, that seemed to reflect the feelings of the children, and Maria in particular. She was indignant, her stomach grumbling, almost as though her mother and the others had left her alone to go off and eat something delicious without her. The other children were flipping through the channels on the television, trying to find a program that might interest Maria and cheer her up again. Nanjo was sitting on the sofa, gazing blissfully at the children while reading a book. It must have been a book about chess. The sound of footsteps came rushing toward them with a pitter-patter. There was only one set, so they realized before seeing who it belonged to that it was probably Kanon, not Kraus and the rest.
奥様、失礼します。
その様子では見つけられなかったようですね。
申し訳ございません。まだ。
もう十分です。ご苦労をかけました。
She didn't know where they were, but they had to be somewhere on this island. They hadn't had a thing to eat since the previous night, so their stomachs must be growling about now. They'd probably come plodding back of their own accord before long. By now, Natsuhi was thoroughly exasperated and started to feel that there was no reason for them to go out of their way in search.
私はお客様方にお茶のご用意をしに厨房へ行きます。二人とも早朝からご苦労様でした。
Natsuhi left the parlor, acting as though the release in tension had caused a new surge in her headache. Kanon tried to call her back, but Natsuhi left swiftly.
どうした？まだ何かあるのか？
はい。旦那様方のお姿を見つける。
Kanon sounded evasive. It looked as though he didn't know where they were, but had spotted something that might be connected to their disappearance. Eva and Hideyoshi noticed this exchange of words and came over. They'd probably picked up on something strange in Kanon's behavior.
どうしたんや、カノン君。クラウス兄さんたちは見つかったんか？
実は、バラ庭園の倉庫の様子がおかしいのです。
様子がおかしいというのはどういう意味だ？
それが、何と説明すればいいのか。
Kanon hesitated once more. His tone wasn't at all what you'd expect from this usually fearless boy. Seeing this, Eva and Hideyoshi looked at each other dubiously.
どういうこと？倉庫の中に兄さんたちがいたんじゃないの？
いえ、中はこれから調べます。その鍵を取りに戻ったところなのですが、
ようわからんが、とにかく中を調べればいいだけの話じゃないか。その倉庫の鍵はどこにあるんや？
使用人室にあります。すぐに中を確かめましょう。
Kanon dashed off to the servant room and returned with the key. Genji left the parlor, saying that he would go check, but then Eva and Hideyoshi followed after him. What was this something strange about the storehouse that had caused the usually fearless Kanon to hesitate? It was still pouring outside, but perhaps their curiosity over this something that Kanon couldn't talk about won out. While the children made a big fuss about watching television, Kanon and the rest dashed over to the entrance. The Rose Garden storehouse was a place that housed various tools used to manage the garden. It was definitely not a pretty building. Because of its appearance, it had been built so that it was hidden in a corner of the Rose Garden. Kanon, Genji, Eva, and Hideyoshi came cutting across the Rose Garden holding umbrellas. They entered a small path just off the Rose Garden, which was normally off limits for those appreciating the garden and only used by those maintaining it. As they dashed down that, the storehouse came into view in front of them. It was quite an old shed, and compared to the flawlessly perfect beauty of the rose garden, it was pretty seedy looking. It was easy to understand why it had been built in a hard-to-see place. Eva and Hideyoshi arrived at the storehouse long after Kanon and Genji.
カノン君たちは早いな。わしは心臓が爆発しそうや。
こんなところに倉庫なんか建ててたのね。何よそれ。
When Eva looked where Kanon was pointing, she was at a loss for words. Noticing this, Hideyoshi also followed Kanon's finger and was likewise too shocked to speak. The entrance to the storehouse was a kind of shutter, and there, everyone suddenly realized why Kanon had been unable to find words to describe what they now saw. On the shutter, which was completely filthy from being exposed to wind and rain for so long, stuck right on it, there was something that looked like a strange dark red liquid. Mucus? Or maybe it was some sticky paint? An indescribably eerie shape was drawn on the shutter with some kind of ghastly substance. The rain had caused it to drip down like fresh blood leaking from an open wound. No more beating around the bush. Some kind of mark was drawn there. The ghastly substance that looked like blood, in a shape that seemed to suggest something ominous. 2 circles were drawn there, and inside of them was a design that looked like a cross. The 4 ends of the cross were widely exaggerated, and it looked like some kind of crest from somewhere around Europe. And in the cracks between those shapes, written closely packed together, were some unfamiliar characters or possibly symbols.
なんちゅう悪趣味な落書きや。これ、あれか？悪魔の儀式とかの魔法陣いうやつとちゃうか？
It wasn't surprising that Hideyoshi would say that about such a ghastly shape, drawn with a deep red, dripping substance.
これ、いつ書かれたの？
昨日、雨が降り出す前にここに来ましたが、その時には何も書かれてませんでした。
他の方々の目に触れる前に何とかしよう。ご覧になられたらご不快になられるだろう。
そうね。ただの倉庫小屋とはいえ、こんな気持ち悪い落書きを1秒たりとも放置したくないわ。
倉庫の中に塗料もあります。応急処置で後日、天気のいい日に改めて塗装しましょう。
Genji remembered that he had just recently seen another scribble, and that it too had been made with a strange dark red substance the same color as this. That must have been... That's right, he had seen it on the door to Natsuhi's room.
カノン君、さっさとこの落書きを消して戻りましょう。たとえ倉庫とはいえ、実家の落書きは本当に腹立たしいわ。
すぐに済ませますので。
Kanon squatted in front of the shutter and unlocked it. He then lifted it up with all of his strength. A boisterous noise resounded, and the eerie shape drawn on the shutter began to get sucked in through the top as the shutter was raised. At least for the time being, that ominous drawing disappeared from their direct gaze, and they all breathed a sigh of relief. Thanks to a kids program they came across, Maria was feeling much better. Battler and Jessica were poking fun at the kids show at every turn, cackling together. George was enjoying the program with Maria from her perspective. Nanjo sat on a sofa by himself, passing the time by reading quietly. They heard hurried footsteps coming from the hallway. They were the footsteps of a single person. That mean it wasn't the group of 4 that had just left. It was Genji. It was very rare for Genji, who considered being out of breath a violation of a servant's virtues, to be gasping for air. He'd probably come dashing back from outside the mansion. His shoulders were soaking wet and he didn't have his usual trim appearance. When Genji noticed Nanjo looking at him, he gave a small silent bow and quickly approached him.
Nanjo sensei, 申し訳ございません。至急お越しください。何事ですかな?
If they need a doctor, I have a pretty good idea of where this is going. As Genji whispered something into Nanjo's ear, Nanjo went pale. He rose from the sofa, trying not to be noticed by the children who were still engrossed by the TV, and the two of them rapidly left the parlor, muffling their footsteps. Just as they were about to exit the parlor, they came across Natsuhi, who was pushing a serving cart loaded with a tea set. Genji whispered something into Natsuhi's ear, and Natsuhi went pale too in apparent shock. Then, leaving the servant cart where it was, the three of them dashed towards the entrance. George noticed them running down the rose garden through the window.
なんだろう。源氏さんと南條先生と、あれは夏日おばさんかな。
どうしたんだよ、兄貴。
何かあったのかな。ひどい慌てようだったね。
When Jessica and Maria saw that Eva, Hideyoshi, and Nanjo were no longer in their seats, and that the servant cart had been abandoned in the entrance to the parlor, they also realized that something was the matter.
何か事故でもあったとか?
行ってみようぜ。俺たちだけのけ者なんて面白くねえしな。
For some reason, what Battler said sounded extremely indiscreet. But they couldn't deny that they were a little insecure and concerned after seeing the adults run off into the rain without regards to their appearance.
行ってみようぜ。何があったか気になるぜ。
Jessica's uneasy words spoke for all of them.
おい、マリア。お前も来るか？それとも、テレビを見てるか？
おう、マリアはテレビがいい。おう。
僕たちだけで行こう。マリアちゃん、すぐ戻るからね。テレビを見て待ってるんだよ。
おう。
By the time the kids made it outside, the adults were no longer in sight, but Jessica seemed to have a pretty good idea where they'd gone, judging by the direction they'd been running. Following Jessica, we ran through the rain-soaked rose garden. The wind seemed to suddenly get stronger. The malicious sound of thunder began to ring out like it had the previous night. It felt like an eerie something had surrounded the island and was trying to stop us from moving forward.
Jessica, この先には何があるんだ?
確か園芸道具なんかの倉庫があったはずだぜ。
そんなところに一体何があるんだろうね。
Just as Jessica has said, they began to see a storehouse in front of them. They could also see the adults there. The shutter to the storehouse was open, and several adults looked as though they were searching for something. For some reason, only Natsuhi was outside the storehouse, without even holding an umbrella. She looked like she was hanging her head, and her back was facing them. There was Genji, Nanjo, and Natsuhi, who had just left the mansion. The ones who'd left earlier, Kanon, Eva, and Hideyoshi, were also there, making for a small crowd of people. But there was absolutely no bustle of activity. When Natsuhi realized that the children were approaching, a terrible expression rose to her face, and she ran at them with her arms spread wide.
来てはいけません。お屋敷へ戻っていなさい。
But despite that, no, because of that, the kids saw the scene Natsuhi was trying to keep them away from. Inside the storehouse, with its shutter wide open, a faint fluorescent light shone down. And we're gonna see what was inside that storehouse next time. I mean, come on, I have to have some cliffhangers here and there. But honestly, I'm out of time, and it just happened to work out this way. So, we're gonna end it here. Until next time, take care. I'll see you then. I want to find out what's behind that shutter, but it's gonna have to wait until next video. So goodbye.